and packed the 3 dresses of the sun, moon, and stars up in a nutshell, and wrapped herself up in the mantle of all sorts of furs, and besmeared her face and hands with soot. Then she threw herself upon heaven for help in her need, and went away and journeyed on the whole night, till at last she came to a large wood. As she was very tired, she sat herself down in the hollow of the tree, and soon fell asleep. And there she slept on till it was midday. And it happened that as the king, to whom the wood belonged, was hunting in the woods, his dogs came to the tree and began to sniff about and run around and round, and then to bark. "Look sharp," said the king to the huntsman, "and see what sorts of game lies there." And the huntsman went up to the tree, and when they came back again, said, "In the tree hollow there lies the most wonderful beast, such as we have never saw before. Its skin seems of 1,000 kinds of fur, but there it lies fast asleep. See," said the king, "if you can catch it alive, and we will take it with us." There we go. So the huntsman took it up, and the maiden awoke and was greatly frightened, and said, "I am a poor child that has neither father nor mother left. Have pity on me, and take me with you." Then they said, "Yes, Miss Catskin, you will do for the kitchen. You can sweep up the ashes and do things of that sort." So they put her in the coach and took her home to the king's palace. Then they showed her a little corner under the staircase, where no light of day ever peeked in, and said, "Catskin, you may lie there and sleep there." And she was sent into the kitchen and made to fetch wood and water, to blow the fire, pluck the poultry, pick the herbs, sift the ashes, and do all the dirty work. Thus Catskin lived for a long time very sorrowfully. "Ah, pretty princess," thought she, "what will now become of thee?" But it happened one day that a feast was to be held in the king's castle. So she said to the cook, "May I go up a little while and see what's going on? I will take care and stand behind the door." And the cook said, "Yes, you may go, but be back again in half an hour's time to rake out the ashes." Then she took her little lamp and went into her cabin, and took off her fur skin and washed the soot from off her face and hands, so that her beauty shone forth like the sun from behind the clouds. She next opened her nutshell and brought out of it the dress that shone like sun, and so went to the feast. Everyone made way for her, for nobody knew her, and they thought she could be no less than a king's daughter. But the king came up to her and held out his hand and danced with her, and he thought in his heart, "I never saw anyone half so beautiful." When the dance was at an end, she curtsied, and when the king looked around for her, she was gone. No one knew whither. The guard who stood at the castle gate were called in, but they had seen no one. The truth was that she had run into her little cabin, pulled off her dress, blackened her face and hands, put on the fur-skin cloak, and was cat-skin again. When she went into the kitchen to work and began to rake the ashes, the cook said, "Let that alone till morning, and heat the king's soup. I should like to run up now and give a peep. But take care you don't let a hair fall into it, or you will run a chance of never eating again." As soon as the cook went away, Catskin heated the king's soup and toasted up a slice of bread as nicely as ever she could. And when she was ready, she went and looked in the cabin for her little golden ring, and put it into the dish in which the soup was. When the dance was over, the king ordered his soup to be brought, and it pleased him so well that he thought he had never tasted any so good before. At the bottom he saw the gold ring lying, and as he could not make out how it got there, he ordered the cook to be sent for. The cook was frightened when he heard the order, and said to Catskin, "You must have let a hair fall into the soup. If it be so, you will have a good beating." Then he went before the king and asked him who cooked the soup. "I did," answered he. But the king said, "That is not true. It was better done than you could do." Jeez! Then he answered, "To tell the truth, I did not cook it, but Catskin did." "Then let Catskin come up," said the king. And when she came, he said to her, "Who are you?" "I am a poor child," said she, "who has lost both father and mother." How came you in my palace?" asked he. "I am good for nothing," said she, "but to be schoolin girl, and to have boots and shoes thrown at my head." But how did you get the ring that was in the soup?" asked the king. But she would not own that she knew anything about the ring. So the king sent her away again about her business. After a time there was another feast, and Catskin asked the cook to let her go up and see it as before. "Yes," said he, "but come back again in half an hour and cook the soup that he likes so much." Then he ran to her little cabin, washed herself quickly, and took out the dress, which was silvery as the moon, and put it on. And when she went in looking like the king's daughter, the king went up to her and rejoiced at seeing her again. And when the dance began, he danced with her. After the dance was at an end, she managed to slip out so slyly that the king did not see where she had gone. But she sprang into her little cabin and made herself into Catskin again, and went into the kitchen to cook the soup. Whilst the cook was above, she got the golden necklace and dropped it into the soup. Then it was brought to the king, who ate it, and it pleased him as well as before. So he sent for the cook, who was again forced to tell him that Catskin cooked it. Catskin was brought again before the king, but she still told him that she was only fit to have boots and shoes thrown at her. But when the king had ordered a feast to be got ready for the third time, it happened just the same as before. "You must be a witch, Catskin," said the cook, "for you always put something in the soup so that it pleases the king better than mine." However, he let her go as before. Then she put on the dress which sparkled like stars and went into the ballroom in it, and the king danced with her again and thought she had never looked so beautiful as she did then. So whilst he was dancing with her, he put a gold ring on her finger without her seeing it, and ordered that the dance should be kept up a long time. When it was at an end, he would have held her fast by the hand, but she slipped away and sprang so quickly through the crowd that she lost sight of her. And she ran as fast as she could into the cabin under the stars. But this time she kept away too long and stayed beyond the half hour, so she had not time to take off her fine dress, but threw her fur mantle over it, and in her haste did not soot her face all over, but left one finger white. Then she ran into the kitchen and cooked the king's soup, and as soon as the cook was gone, she put the golden brooch into the dish. The king got to the bottom. He ordered Catskin to be called once more, and soon saw the white finger and the ring that he had put on it whilst they were dancing. So he seized her hand and kept hold fast of it, and when she wanted to lose herself and spring away, the cloak fell off a little on one side, and the starry dress sparkled underneath. Then he got hold of the fur and tore it off, and her golden hair and beautiful form were seen, and she could no longer hide herself. So she washed the soot and ashes from her face and showed herself to be the most beautiful beloved bride, the most beautiful princess upon the face of the earth. But the king said, "You are my beloved bride, and we will never more be parted from each other." And the wedding feast was held, and a merry day it was. The Robber Bridegroom. There was once a miller who had a pretty daughter, and when she was grown up, he thought to himself, if a seemingly man should come to ask her for his wife, I will give her to him that she may be taken care of. Now it so happened that one did come who seemed to be very rich and behaved very well, and as the miller saw no reason to find fault with him, he said he should have his daughter. Yet the maiden did not love him quite so well as a bride ought to love their bridegroom, but on the other hand, soon began to feel a kind of inward shuddering whenever she saw or thought of him. One day he said to her, "Why do you not come and see my home, since you are to be my bride?" "I do not know where your house is," said the girl. "'Tis out there," said her bridegroom, "yonder in the dark green wood." Then she began to try to avoid going, and said, "But I cannot find the way thither." "Well, but you must come and see me next Sunday," said the bridegroom. "I have asked some guests to meet you, and that you may find your way through the wood. I will stretch ashes for you along the path." "Whose ashes?" When Sunday came and the maiden was to go out, she felt very much troubled and took care to put on 2 pockets and filled them with peas and beans. She soon came to the wood and found her path strewed with ashes. So she followed the track, and at every step threw a pea on the right and a bean on the left side of the road. Thus she journeyed on the whole day till she came to a house which stood in the middle of the dark wood. She saw no one within, and all was quite still, till she heard a voice cry, "Turn again, bonny bride! Turn again home! Haste from the robber's den! Haste away!" She looked around and saw a little bird sitting in a cage that hung over the door, and he flapped his wings and again she heard him cry, "Turn away, bonny bride! Turn away! Turn again home! Haste from the robber's den! Haste away home!" However, the bride went in and roamed along from one room to another, and so over all the house, but it was quite empty, and not a soul could she see. At last she came to the room where a very, very old woman was sitting. Pray, can you tell me, my good woman," said she, "if my bridegroom lives here?" "Ah, my dear child," said the old woman, You are come to fall into the trap laid for you. Your wedding can only be with death, for the robber will surely take away your life. If I do not save you, you are lost." So she hid the bride beneath a large cask, yes, and then said to her, "Do not stir or move yourself at all, lest some harm should befall you. And when the robbers are asleep, we will run off. I have long wished to get away." She had hardly done this when the robbers came in and brought another young maiden with them that had been ensnared like the bride. Then they began to feast and drink, and were deaf to her shrieks and groans, and they gave her some wine to drink. It's getting dark. I should probably take out the trash after this. Three glasses, one of white, one of red, and one of yellow, upon which she fainted and fell down dead. Now the bride began to grow very uneasy behind the cask, and thought that she too must die in turn. Then the one that was to be her bridegroom saw that there was a golden ring on the little finger of the maiden that had been murdered, and as he tried to snatch it off, it flew up in the air and fell down again behind the cask, just in the bride's lap. So he took a light and searched about all around the room for it, but could not find anything. And another of the robbers said, "Have you looked behind the large cask yet?" "Pshaw," said the old woman. "Come sit still and eat your supper now, and leave the ring alone till tomorrow. It won't run away, I'll warrant." So the robbers gave up the search and went on with their eating and drinking, but the old woman dropped a sleeping draught into their wine, and they laid themselves down and slept and snored roundly. And when the bride heard this, she stepped out from behind the cask, and as she was forced to walk over the sleepers who were lying around on the floor, she trembled lest she should awaken some of them. But heaven aided her, so that she soon got through the danger. And the old woman went upstairs with her, and they both ran away from this murderous den. The ashes that had been strewed were now all blown away, but the peas and beans had taken root and were springing up, and showed her the way by the light of the moon. So they walked the whole night, and in the morning reached the mill, when the bride told her father all that had happened. As soon as the next day arrived, when the wedding was to take place, the bridegroom came, and the millers gave orders that all his friends and relations should be asked to the feast. And as they were all sitting at table, one of them proposed that each of the guests should tell some tale. Then the bridegroom said to the bride, when it came turn, "Well, my dear, do you know nothing? Come tell us some story." "Yes," answered she, "I can tell you a dream that I dreamt. I once thought I was going through a wood, and went on and on till I came to a house where there was not a soul to be seen but a bird in a cage that cried out twice, 'Turn away, bonny bride, turn again home. Haste from the robber's den, haste away home.' I only dreamt that, my love. Then I went through all the rooms, which were empty, until I came to a room where there sat a very old woman. And I said to her, 'Does my bridegroom live here?' But she answered, 'Ah, yes. Ah, my child dear, you have fallen into a murderer's snare. Your bridegroom will surely kill you.' I only dreamt that, my love. But she hid me behind the large cask, and hardly had done this when the robbers came in, dragging a young woman along with them. Then they gave her 3 kinds of wine to drink, white, red, and yellow, till she fell upon the ground. I only dreamt that, my love. After they had done this, one of the robbers saw that there was a golden ring on her finger, and snatched at it. But it flew up to the ceiling, and then fell behind the great cask, just where I was, and into my lap. And here is the ring." At these words she brought out the ring and showed the guests. When the robber saw all this, and heard what she said, he grew as pale as ashes with fright, and wanted to run off. But the guests held him fast, and gave him up to justice, so that he and all his gang met with the due reward of their wickedness. Ooh, this one's just one page. The Three Sluggers. The king of the country, a long way off, had 3 sons. He liked one as well as another, and did not know which to leave his kingdom to after his death. So he was dying. So when he was dying, he called them all to him and said, "Dear children, the laziest slugger of the 3 shall be king after me." "Then," said the eldest, "the kingdom is mine, for I am so lazy that when I lie down to sleep, if anything were to fall into my eyes so that I could not shut them, I should still go on sleeping." The second said, "Father, the kingdom belongs to me, for I am so lazy that when I sit by the fire to warm myself, I would sooner have my toes burnt than to take the trouble to draw my legs back." The third said, "Father, the kingdom is mine, for I am so lazy that if I were going to be hanged with the rope around my neck and somebody were to put a sharp knife into my hands to cut it, I had rather be hanged than raise my hand to do it." When the father heard this, he said, You shall be king, for you are the You shall be the king, for you are the You shall be king, for you are the fittest man. I scratched my book by mistake. Ooh, this is a good one. Just out of curiosity, how many pages do we have left in here? The 7 Ravens. There was once a man who had 7 sons, and the last of all one daughter. Though the little girl was very pretty, she was so weak and small that they thought she could not live. But they said she should at once be christened. So the father sent one of his sons in haste, each to the spring to get some water, but the other 6 ran with him. Each wanted to be first at drawing the water, and so they were in such a hurry that all let their pitchers fall into the well, and they stood very foolishly looking at one another, and did not know what to do, for none dared go home. In the meantime, the father was uneasy and could not tell what made the young man stay so long. "Surely," said he, "the whole 7 must have forgotten themselves over some game of play." And when he had waited till still longer, and they yet did not come, he flew into a rage, and he wished them all turned to ravens. Scarcely had he spoken the words when he heard a croaking over his head, and looked up and saw 7 ravens as black as coals flying around and around. Sorry as he was to see his wish so fulfilled, he did not know how what was done could be undone, and comforted himself as well as he could for the loss of his 7 sons, with his dear little daughter, who soon became stronger and